And we are live. Sorry for the late start, everyone. Complicated business. Welcome to the show. All right. So I'm sorry to announce, but this will be the last of any Heartland podcast ever, since the EPA is ditching the climate scam once and for all. Our work is no longer needed. So long and thanks for all the fish, right? Just kidding. The war is not won, although we have made some serious headway with the pending withdrawal of the EPA's greenhouse gas endangerment finding and our first ever governmental climate change report that took a distinctly unalarmist view of the future. This is merely a step in the right direction. There is so much more to be done, so I was kidding. We're not going anywhere. Also, we are going to talk about Sydney Sweeney's jeans, how the Democrats are still attempting to resist the momentum of the Trump agenda, and new updates to the Russiagate saga. All of this and more in episode 504 of the In the Tank podcast.
You guys are complaining about that Sydney Sweeney jeans ad, so I went and saw it.
That's Nazi propaganda. Wow.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in the tank. Though I guess it's not really tuning in on this platform, is it? I wonder if we'll use that phrase forever. Anyway, as always, welcome to our panel, starting with Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications of the Heartland Institute. Jim, how goes the new office?
The new office goes well. It goes kind of cold, though. It's very chilly in here. So I had a jacket on earlier, but I'm going to try to tough it out in the air-conditioned comfort of a building in Schaumburg, Illinois. Yes, we've moved our offices. We're settling into a brand new place. It'll be ready for a grand opening celebration before too long. It's looking great. It's perfectly right size for our organization right now, and we couldn't be happier. And I'm also chilling out with a summer haircut. It's quite short. A little shorter. Once the hairdresser goes short, you got to make it all match. So hopefully nobody's too horrified.
Well, I'm missing the sight of your, infinitely long pothos plant that you had in your other studio, Jim.
That's coming.
All right. And also we have Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute. He is not at a new office. So Sam, how are you doing this week?
Doing just fine, thanks. All good. It's nice to get some good news in the news lately, as we've been having. So let's have more.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to get right into what we have to talk about today. But as always, if you want to support this show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like the video. And remember that sharing it helps to break through YouTube's suppression. They really do not like us very much. Leaving a comment actually helps us too, even just saying hi. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a review on whatever platform you're using. So let's get going here. So we do have a segment for Unhinged this week. I kind of thought about skipping this story over because it's, it's culture war stuff. It's important, but I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with it, but we are going to take a look. But before we get into that, what's not unhinged? Investing in precious metals. So Jim, please take it away.
Yeah, we're happy. Our podcasts have gotten, they're growing, and we've actually now have a sponsor that we're very proud to tell you about. And it's Advisor Metals. Now, if you are like me and you listen to a lot of conservative shows, you hear tons of pitches for buying precious metals. But we're here to tell you that why we trust Advisor Metals over all of them. It's the man who runs the company, and that's Ira Bershasky. He's the managing member and the owner of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals, and is the only person in the precious metals industry who has the Commodities Future Trading Commission federal registration. That sounds pretty complicated, but here's what that means for you. It's that everything Ira or a member of his team says to you has to be factual. So there's no sales pitch or bait and switch. Ira is held to the highest ethical standards, and there is full transparency working with Advisor Metals. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you're planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty, which you might, thanks to the Fed not lowering rates, maybe we'll get to that later. If you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. Ira will make this all very, very easy for you. So please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals. That's our other show that's on Fridays. climaterealismshow.com/metals. And you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. Again, that's climaterealismshow.com/metals. And when you talk to Ira, be sure to let him know that we sent you. And that helps us as you're helping your own financial future. Again, thank you very much. Our new sponsor, Advisor Metals.
I had a Jim moment for a second. That is so exciting. I'm pretty stoked that we have. It feels like we're a real conservative podcast now because we're selling precious metals on air. All right, so I'm going to get into our unhinged segment here. Thank you so much, Jim, for doing that ad read for us. All right, so if you follow the news at all, you will have seen that American Eagle, the clothing company, recently put out an ad series starring actress Sydney Sweeney, who is in a lot of kind of drama shows like Euphoria and White Lotus, that kind of thing. She's very attractive, and American Eagle thought it would be attractive and funny and clever to put out ads for denim where they use a play on words, jeans as in genetic and jeans as in blue jeans. Oh boy, the left did not like that one. Feminists in particular, and you know exactly the types, are apoplectic about this. And we have a little video compilation here that was put together by Sydney Watson, who is a very good political commentator on YouTube. You guys should definitely check her out as well. Can we play the unhinged clip?
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has very genes.
Did American Eagle just run an ad for eugenics?
You guys are complaining about that Sydney Sweeney jeans ad, so I went and saw it.
That's Nazi propaganda. Wow.
Should we be surprised that a company whose name is literally American Eagle is making fascist propaganda like this? Probably not, but it's still really shocking. Like, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman is talking about her good genes. Like, that is Nazi propaganda.
It is Nazi propaganda. There's no way around it. Let me explain. Hypothetically, let's say we did live in a nation prior to 2016 and all the bullshit that has coincided with it. And you put out an ad, a white, blonde, blue-eyed, Hitler's wet dream talking about how much she loves her genetics. It would still be weird. But then you add the fact that the nation is on its last leg promoting this Christian nationalism, white supremacist, fascist bigot bullshit alongside a leader that has explicitly stressed the importance of being gene rich as opposed to gene natural, which falls alongside a lot of the same things that Hitler promoted back in Nazi Germany.
What? What?
What indeed? Yikes, they are mad. I actually, besides the politics point of this, I always think it's really weird when somebody gets this defensive and upset when someone else is complimented. Saying that Sydney Sweeney is attractive, she has good genes, doesn't mean that other people who look different don't have good genes or aren't attractive. So, Jim, why are they so mad? They act like we haven't had non-white, non-traditionally attractive people in ads for years now. So I'm curious, why this one? Why now?
Because the woke era is over, and it happened very suddenly, right around early November of 2024. The American people said, we've had enough of that. It wasn't just a vote for Donald Trump or against Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. Everybody knows it because they can feel it, right? You can feel it in your bones, and you're seeing it in where our pop culture is now going, or I should say returning. When you lose your dominant cultural position from which you imposed cultural tyranny for years and years and years. And then suddenly, overnight, seemingly overnight, it's all gone. You're going to be upset. Those crazy ladies, those radical, brainwashed, radical feminists who, who probably have 2 degrees and $200,000 in debt that they're never going to pay off because they were waiting for Biden, where Kamala Harris to just wave it away. Their lives are not as exciting or fulfilling as they once were because they were in the dominant cultural position. And America, and I think the world, has said, we're not doing that anymore. We are not, we're not going to pretend that a 500 square foot billboard in Times Square of a, let's just say, not conventionally attractive and probably obese person wearing Calvin Klein underwear is good. And we're not going to pretend that that is aesthetically pleasing. Look at all the nose rings in all of these people and the tattoos and the hair colors. They are anti Sydney Sweeney. They're anti traditional beauty. And they really believed that they had made the society and the culture turn a corner and everything would be the way they wanted it to be, reflective of their aesthetic and their desires. And the United States of America and the American people, and now corporate America, which, by the way, was bullied into making us all pretend that this was normal and that the normalcy of before was somehow oppression. Nobody believes that anymore. We used to pretend to believe it. Basically, a lot of people did, just to keep these people from screaming in your faces. If this happened, if American Eagle decided to hire Sydney Sweeney in this ad campaign 3 years ago, social media would have blown up and tried to destroy American Eagle. Those days are over. Those days are over. And instead, American Eagle stock skyrocketed when the ad hit and is still going up because of all the controversy. This is the greatest, being the first one out of the box to return to normalcy is a good thing for American Eagle. And you're going to see a lot of other companies follow suit. And there's just, I put that little clip together, and I'm sorry if you guys were, anybody was triggered by it. It was pretty funny. My favorite one was that young, crazy redhead who's crazy even among crazy redheads. She's pegging the scale on being a crazy redhead. When she said, I was listening to it again as we're running it through. She said, if any of this happened prior to 2016, exactly, it would have been a problem prior to 2016, but it's not 2016 anymore. And we are returning, I think, in so many ways in our politics, in our federal government, as we're going to be talking about, dismantling the deep state. People, the left and Democrats always like to say, you vote for change. Let's vote for change. Of course, the unofficial or the slogan of Barack Obama when he came on the scene in 2008 was hope and change. What we're seeing now is actual change. And I think more than just hope, but proof that we are going to return to normal, and we're not going to keep pretending that the crazy, born out of academia norms of the radical left are actually norms and are actually normal. We're done pretending with that. And so you're going to see more meltdowns, and we'll be here to cover it, which is the fun part.
Our producer, Andy, had a really good idea in the background here. I don't know if he can do it for us. He says that he wants to play the Jaguar ad again as comparison to seeing, what ads are reasonable and normal according to the left that they have no problem with whatsoever compared to what is apparently fascism. So if Sydney Sweeney's ad is fascism, I don't really know what to label the Jaguar ad. So while he digs for that, Sam, let's go to you. I mean, obviously, I think Jim is right that this reflects something deeper than just, feminists are mad that someone attractive is on TV, right? And on billboards and stuff. I mean, we remember a couple of years ago, the like fat acceptance stuff with Calvin Klein. It was, as Jim referred to earlier, was something that conservatives were mad about, but it kind of faded out because we're like, well, they're not trying to appeal to us anyway, so who cares? But it's actually starting to get very very heated in the advertising space. NASCAR just released like the coolest ad ever. That was clearly recruitment propaganda for the Navy, but it was still like the coolest thing I've ever seen. I joked to a friend that, my goodness, it's working if this is propaganda. But Sam, what's your take on this whole freak out?
I think that this whole past 2 decades have reflected technological and economic changes. And I don't want to get, I'm not going to get too technical here, but the point is that the takeover of the internet by a few small corporations made it possible for the internet to speak kind of with one voice. So the whole world is speaking with one voice, and it was very left wing and very sort of culturally left wing voice, and that became more and more powerful until around, let's say, 2021, 22, 23, and now it started to recede. And the reason that happened was because technological and economic change enabled Elon Musk to buy Twitter and create an alternative voice that could be heard. Now, these voices on both sides were already there. Naomi Wolf wrote this book called The Beauty Myth in the 1990s. And her whole premise was that human beauty is a myth, and that there's no reality there, and it's just whatever, it's all social. But it's not. And anybody with any kind of knowledge of the human genetics and how the human brain works knows that there is a sense of beauty, that there are things that the human mind finds attractive and things that it doesn't. And then you add in the notion of equality. And the premise that you have here is that, well, there is no such thing as beauty, and everyone should be considered equally beautiful. And therefore, anybody who makes any claim to the contrary, that something is more beautiful than something else, is saying that that thing is intrinsically more valuable than something else, which is a fallacy, a fallacious move in logic. So you're saying, well, everybody should be considered equal. And so since there's no such thing as beauty anyway, then everybody's equal. So, but that's obviously not true. And so what happened was that when they had a monopoly on discourse, basically a monopoly, they were able to shut everything down. So you couldn't give any reasonable point of view to the contrary. Now that's not true. And so you go from Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney to the American Eagle and Sydney Sweeney, and it's a natural movement. It really is. And one thing I find very interesting is that the last commentator in the clips that we showed said, "Can you think of anything more fascist than this?" And she was relating that to the name American Eagle. That something that's American and patriotic is by nature fascist. In prior years, that would have just gone and just sat there, and nobody would have been able to respond to it. But now it's contradicted immediately, and everybody can hear it. You can go hear it if you want to. So I think that this shows this isn't just a change in attitude. This is a change in the way the world works, and therefore, in my view, it's more permanent and more lasting.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm about to inflict something upon our viewership. We have been asked to not do this. We are going to do it anyway. Here you are, the Jaguar ad.
At least we have the sound down.
I'm especially sorry to Arthur Morgan. Please do not rob any trains in retaliation for this travesty here.
The thing about this ad is I think it came out in December or January, right? And so, I mean, that's like getting the last ticket for the Titanic. I mean,
Yeah.
This was so off the mark, and like the world had moved on, that this was not only not edgy as it never was. I think when we first covered this, I said I enjoyed this a lot more when it was a New Order video in 1983. But
I really liked The Fifth Element. I thought that was a great movie.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, but it's like it's out of a step. So you're not going to see Dylan Mulvaney doing any ads anymore. You're not going to see any ads from Jaguar on this. And in fact, so much has changed. I mean, I think Jaguar had announced that they were going to go all electric, I believe, just a few years ago. Didn't Mercedes-Benz or another one of these luxury brands say that they were phasing out the internal combustion engine and were going to go all electric for a market that actually doesn't exist even in the luxury genre? And you're going to see very quietly all of these car companies decide that they're going to go back to normal too. And they're not going to pretend that, government imposed and, culturally imposed by those, running the culture, that is permanent and that's the way things have to be. The market actually is going to decide these things. And the market has decided that Sydney Sweeney is hot and that her commercials for these blue jeans are a return to, as somebody mentioned, they were controversial at the time, but commercials from the 80s with Brooke Shields. And I believe it was either Gloria Vanderbilt jeans. Boy, if I remembered that exactly and didn't say another brand, I don't know what that says. But a return to normalcy is what I think a lot of people were craving. And again, as I mentioned before, we were really just pretending all of these things. The vast majority of people never believe them, and they're done lying to themselves and they're done lying in public. And we are going back to normal, and it's a great thing.
I like that you mentioned the Titanic, because very much like that, the woke people, and especially the people who were working with corporations to make them more woke, did not see this iceberg coming. And they really should have, because it's big, it's out there, and it was right in front of them, and they just crashed right into it. And you know what? Great.
Yeah, well, I really think that they just live in their little like marketing universe bubbles and their like cool, fun offices with the built-in coffee shops and stuff. And they don't leave that little marketing bubble, and so they think that what people want to see is what their like DEI advisors tell them people want them to see, right? But that is all coming to an end. And you guys, we could talk about this for a long time because we love the culture war on this program, or at least we love talking about it. But we're going to get to something pretty important here. What I was alluding to at the start of the show. The endangerment finding is perhaps truly endangered now. I mean, we really do seem like we are about to see it withdrawn. I think most of our audience watches the Climate Realism show, which is on Fridays at the same time as this show. So we'll be going over all of this in way more detail tomorrow. We have a special guest on as well, I believe. But I really thought that this was important to hit on this show today. So for those of you who are not aware, and I do see some names that I have not seen before in the chat, so I
Genes
will briefly
are passed down from parents to offspring.
That's not what we meant.
Often,
who are not aware of what the EPA's greenhouse gas endangerment finding is. So I have this handy dandy post that is written up by our own Anthony Watts. I think gives a really nice summary. So I'll read from part of that now. The endangerment finding classified carbon dioxide and 5 other greenhouse gases as pollutants under the Clean Air Act. This allowed, and this was in 2009, this allowed the EPA to regulate these gases despite the fact that the Clean Air Act was originally intended to address harmful pollutants like smog, soot, and sulfur dioxide, substances with direct and immediate health impacts. This finding set the stage for far-reaching mandates on power plants, vehicles, appliances, and more, giving the federal government a license to micromanage industries and individual choices alike. The endangerment finding has triggered a cascade of regulations with far-reaching and harmful consequences for industries, consumers, and the broader economy. And he lists some of those, including energy costs and reliability. Endangerment finding is why they target coal and natural gas so much, which drives up our electricity prices. Transportation, so vehicle emission standards, ruining cars. Housing and appliances. The fact that none of your appliances work as well as old ones did, that's part of this as well. Agriculture and food prices, and the erosion of individual freedoms. So from the kind of car that you are able to drive to the appliances you use to how you are even allowed to heat your home, what were once personal choices are increasingly dictated by federal mandate, all justified by the need to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. So now the EPA under Lee Zeldin is going to scrap that. And this has been aided by a report published by the Department of Energy with the wonderful title of A Critical Review of the Impacts of Greenhouse Gas Emissions on the U.S. Climate. The DOE says that among the key findings, the report concludes that carbon dioxide-induced warming appears to be less damaging economically than commonly believed, and that aggressive mitigation strategies could be more harmful than beneficial. This is coming from the Department of Energy, you guys. Additionally, they say, the report finds that U.S. policy actions are expected to have undetectably small direct impacts on the global climate, and any effects will emerge only with long delays. So, holy mackerel, do we like this direction? Sam, the Heartland Institute has been hoping for and working towards this forever, and our allies. What is your initial impression here? I mean, are we celebrating prematurely? I hope not, because we were like basically popping party poppers figuratively from our individual offices over here in the Robinson Center. So what's your take here?
This is definitely something to celebrate. And it's not premature. The only question is how long lasting will this be? I will say that I too had the same thought you had earlier. It's like, well, what are we going to do now? Fortunately, there's plenty of madness in the world, especially among public policy people, and we will have plenty to do. I think, though, that the point that I'm bringing up, though, is that this is not this isn't a law. This isn't a statute. This isn't Congress saying, this is what we meant when we passed the Clean Air Act. This is the White House putting aside a decision that the Obama administration has made. So what one party can do in office, another party can undo and do the opposite of in office, which in fact was what originally happened with the Obama administration. It was rather strange and puzzling that Trump didn't tackle this in his first term. So, but he's done it now, and we should all be thrilled, because this makes an enormous difference. One of the things that's really important is that it takes away a weapon that the left has had to to regulate everything. They could just get into anything they want by saying, well, it creates more carbon dioxide. Of course, carbon dioxide is a good thing, so they say it's more carbon. So that's really very important, because they could and did tackle everything. So what this does is it gives us 4 years. However, I think it does more than that, and I think this is a little more permanent than let's say the doomsters, or what do you call it, doomers? Doomers might suggest, because it fits very well with recent Supreme Court decisions, which say that the White House and the regulatory agencies cannot just make up things and say, well, this fits with this law, this fits with it, and so it's okay. The original endangerment finding, was a court case. And so what happened there, though, is that the Supreme Court has now basically gone on the side of, frankly, common sense and said, look, if it doesn't say that carbon dioxide's a pollutant, and there's no real evidence that it is, because of course it isn't, it's plant food. It's good for the environment, up to, what is it about, Linnea, you'll have this number right at hand, I'm sure, but it's like up to 20,000 parts per million or something. It's yeah. It's good for everybody, and we're at what, 1/8 of that, or 1/6 of that, or something. So I don't think we have much to worry about in that regard. So I think this could be longer lasting than we might expect, and that is an extremely positive thing. Now, I would say I would like to see a bill come through Congress, or better yet, just a provision in some bill that really has to be passed, maybe another big, beautiful bill, and then just throw that in there that, oh, by the way, carbon dioxide is not a pollutant.
Yeah, I saw someone comment somewhere, probably on X somewhere, to say, what Republicans should be doing right now is just passing a bunch of individual issue bills, one after the next, for the next several
Yes.
months, just a chain of them. And the Democrats would not be able to do hardly anything about it. The only problem is depending on Republicans in this
Right.
case.
You have to log roll. You have to
Yeah.
say, okay, if you want to get this thing done, then we'll do that thing. And Democrats are way better than that way better at that than Republicans are. And
Absolutely.
so Republicans have to get better at that horse trading among their own team. That's the funny thing about conservatives, is that because conservatives, people on the right, tend to be more independent minded and tend to say, okay, well, we should have more freedom. They also tend to disagree with one another much more intensely than the left does. The left to say, okay, I'll give you that, you give me that.
Yep. And Jim, so this actually does tie into the deep state kind of theme for today, which is, the administrative state is definitely part of the deep state. One of the things that Trump administration has been doing is cutting out at the knees all of these various kind of like sub agencies underneath NOAA and NASA and stuff, in order to try and root out some of those entrenched people who have been there for decades, pushing this stuff behind the scenes and controlling everything. Jim, you know people who are kind of privy to, or very privy to, a lot of the inside baseball on these issues. So what's the general kind of atmosphere in those circles?
Well, you mean among climate realists that work for other organizations?
Yeah.
Well, as you said, it's euphoria. It's actually amazement. Now, the Heartland Institute in Trump 1.0, one of our board members, Steve Malloy, was actually a high up muckety muck in the EPA transition team for the first Trump administration. And there was a big wish list of things that they wanted the Trump administration to do between 2017 and 2020 to, make policy that reflected the scientific truth and not political dogma. And there were some accomplishments made, but it seemed that the Trump administration, with all due respect, wasn't super focused on that. And if you remember, in Trump's first term, two big things he wanted to accomplish was his tax cut package and repealing Obamacare, and he was 1 for 2 on that, and all other thing. And then, of course, he had a pretty significant foreign policy agenda that he pursued, I think, extremely well. But climate policy was very much on the back burner. But there was talk. It's like, this is almost 10 years ago. We need to get rid of the endangerment finding. It was like a pie in the sky dream. But we thought we have to try. We'll advocate for it. Let's see if it happens. And of course, it didn't happen. But it became, to Lee Zeldin, for the new EPA administrator, it became agenda item number one, pretty early, actually, right from the drop. And now we've seen it. So we have a what they call the public comment period for the next 45 days to make sure all the proper bureaucratic boxes are checked. And then the endangerment finding is gone. This kind of ties into our first topic today about unhinged libs, and what I talked about, how we are no longer have to pretend or believe what isn't true, that we don't have to believe that it is true just to facilitate and enforce the outlook of and the policy preferences of the radical left. The same is true here when it comes to carbon dioxide as a pollutant. Again, this is a monumental win for climate realism and for science and for sound public policy. The history of this, as you alluded to, Linnea, comes from the lawsuit Massachusetts versus EPA. And again, this was one of those, this was an inside job. This was what the Obama EPA wanted to happen. So they coordinate with radical leftist climate alarmist groups to file lawsuits that hopefully will eventually find their way to the Supreme Court. And it worked out exactly perfectly, which was the setup was to declare carbon dioxide, a harmless, odorless gas, as a pollutant so that the EPA may regulate it. And that's what Lee Zeldin has made clear. We'll talk about this in more detail tomorrow on tomorrow's Climate Realism Show. But as Zeldin pointed out, even in his confirmation hearings, which we did live stream, we live streamed all those. We had a watch party for those back several months ago. He said that the EPA regulations say that the EPA may regulate CO2, not that they have to regulate CO2 as a pollutant. So he decided we're not going to regulate it as a pollutant. In fact, we're going to just we're going to get rid of the endangerment finding altogether. And this is really important because, as as you mentioned earlier, Linnea, this is the reason why we had to shut down all of our coal plants, and Joe Biden was shutting those down at an amazing rate. And then why even natural gas, which emits far less CO2 than a coal plant, those also have to be shut down. But nope, not anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. We can have real, reliable, cheap energy, and we're probably going to be ramping up nuclear as well. I mean, it was because of the endangerment finding that that in federal subsidies, money out of our pocket going to automakers, that the plan was to phase out the manufacture and sale of regular cars with internal combustion engines out, and that make everybody have to go electric, which is very expensive and actually very damaging to the environment to make those things, which they never talk about. We don't have to do that anymore. We can go back to normal. We don't have to ramp up wind and solar power, which is very expensive and unreliable. We can go back to normal and build power plants that are clean, that do not pollute in an extreme way. This isn't 1973 anymore with the crying Indian and the garbage everywhere. EPA did a great job cleaning up our rivers and streams and air and land, and it's time to declare victory, which is what this EPA is doing, and get down to the business of making sure that we maintain the clean environment like an ecologist would want from here on forward, and that they're actually no longer going to be in the business of putting out shoddy science to justify these unjustifiable regulations, like regulating CO2. The Trump administration is basically firing or releasing a lot of scientists who had done nothing but be paid very well and get a nice public pension when they retire, to continue pumping out alarmist, quote unquote, science to justify something that was never justifiable, which was regulating CO2. So one last thing I just want to mention, we talk about this on this podcast a lot, is the artificial intelligence revolution, AI. Linnea, you used to live in Wyoming. We saw a story this week that the AI data centers are now consuming more energy than is used by the human beings who live in the state of Wyoming. Now, Wyoming is I think is the least populous state, at least in the lower 48. So that's not that surprising.
I think the antelope consume more electricity than the human population of Wyoming.
They probably do. But I think the AI revolution and the incredibly energy hungry nature of AI is going to help make this more permanent, because we're not going to be able to be leaders in AI without cheap, reliable, affordable energy. And I know that there's this idea that, every AI server farm can build their own little nuke plant or their own little coal plant. But I think the pressure and the momentum will be there to return a lot more traditional, reliable, fossil fuel-based energy to the overall grid, because grid stability is only going to get less stable the more AI gets into the system. And so the only way to make that viable, and the only way to make it so that Americans can live the life that they should lead, is to abandon completely all of this green energy nonsense and embrace normal energy production again. And so that's really where the permanence is going to be. And the fact that this was able to be accomplished within 7 months of him taking the oath of office is breathtaking and very good sign for the future.
Yeah, and I want to highlight a couple of comments from our little comment section here. A good friend of ours, Doug Pollock, says renewables are like socialism, the equal sharing of inefficiency in a grid. That's funny. Thank you, Doug. And also true. All right. And then Rick Harris says state EPAs should have more control than the Fed. Then California can put themselves out of business. Yeah, except that California is on life support by every state surrounding them, importing fuel. So it would be nice to see what happens if you cut them off from that. Anyway, so Democrats are still resisting this Trump momentum. They will never stop, but they are diversifying their tactics, except for Cory Booker, who does not diversify his tactic. He is the gift that absolutely keeps grandstanding. From the New York Times, we have the spectacle started in the least dramatic way possible. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, Democrat of Nevada and a former attorney general and federal prosecutor, asked for unanimous consent to pass a package of policing bills, including one to reauthorize support for mental health services for law enforcement officers, and another to make recruits eligible for funding for training programs. Pretty standard stuff, right? It went quickly off the rails when Senator Cory Booker, the progressive New Jersey Democrat, rose to object, accusing Ms. Cortez Masto of being complicit with an authoritarian president. Because the Justice Department was weaponizing, in quotes, public safety grants against states and cities that resist the Trump policy agenda, Mr. Booker said that Democrats should oppose the bills unless they added language to safeguard any law enforcement grants from politicization. Calmly but firmly, Ms. Cortez Masto, who represents a swing state, told Mr. Booker that he should have proposed his change when the measures were considered by the committee and passed by a unanimous voice vote. He did not attend that meeting, in fact. He claimed that he was busy. So do we have a clip of his freak out? I think we do. It's titled Booker, Booker.mp4. And it's very illustrative, I think, of his personality.
This, to me, is the problem with Democrats in America right now, is we're willing to be complicit to Donald Trump to let this pass through when we have all the leverage right now there is. We are standing at a moment where our president is eviscerating the Constitution of the United States of America, and we're willing to go along with that today. No, not on my watch. I stand against this. It is a violation of our Constitution for the President of the United States to ignore the will of Congress and decide which states are eligible to grants and which are not. Don't question my integrity. Don't question my motives. I'm standing for Jersey. I am standing for my police officers. I'm standing for the Constitution, and I'm standing for what's right. And dear God, if you want to come at me that way, you're going to have to take it up with me, because there's too much on the line right now in America. As people's due process rights and freedom of the speech rights and secret police are running around this country, picking people up off the streets who have a legal right to be here. There's too much going on in this country.
It's nice.
When are we going to stand together?
He's not
for principles that
You'll never get a word in,
we're agreed with. When are we going to stand together?
Man, you can always depend on Crash Out Corey for some entertainment. It is.
Don't try to womansplain anything to him, Linnea.
Yeah, I know. I was talking over him. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It is funny though to see Democrats arguing over how to proceed with the government, considering Trump being in office. So, I'll send it to you here, Jim. Actually, since you so bravely spoke up on his behalf, what do you think Booker is doing here? I mean, is he bringing up a real political point for Democrats, or is he basically just trying to boost his own image for? I don't know if he's up for midterms or what, but
yeah, I don't know when he's next up for election, and I think he's grandstanding. He's doing his Spartacus moment, and I think he's actually just kind of emoting and expressing the frustration that the Democrat Party has right now, and that they have not been able to muster any real resistance, despite sharing hashtags on social media, resistance. They've really not been able to stop Donald Trump on anything. I mean, if there's one thing they've been able to stop him on, and that's actually the fault of the Republicans, is that he still has, I think, 100 something appointees that need to be approved, confirmed, that are just held up in the Senate, and that's Republicans' job, is to get that through, and they should be doing that. And there's been a lot of talk about how they shouldn't go on vacation in the summer until that is completed, because the alternative to that is to keep the deep state that has been resisting Donald Trump since 2017 or 2016, actually, to get them out and get his agenda through the other way. But putting that aside, the issue here, which is really strange, and he says, Donald Trump is violating the Constitution and we have to stand up to him. And he's mad that, fellow Democrats basically were just pushing this bill through by unanimous consent in the committee process. In fact, we didn't show the clip of it, but Amy Klobuchar was very mad at they kind of shouted at each other. A Democrat from Minnesota, she was mad at Cory Booker for skipping the meetings in which he could have objected then, and to get up on in the floor in the well of the Senate and to scream and yell at the Democrats is inappropriate, because you had your chance, buddy, and you blew it. You didn't show up. So too bad for you. But the underlying issue here, apparently, is that Donald Trump is using, and the Republican Party in Washington is using the power of the purse, basically, to ensure that deep blue cities, sanctuary cities, comply with federal law. If you are going to be a sanctuary city and not cooperate with the enforcement of immigration law via ICE, you should not be getting federal funds to help your police force. This is just the way it should be. That is common sense. That's something that is actually a pretty normal political thing. And the idea of allowing these deep blue cities to continue their resistance against Donald Trump, which is really the agenda of the majority of the American people, and yet continue to just enjoy our tax dollars to boost their own local police departments, is madness. That shouldn't happen. This should have happened in the first term because sanctuary cities are hardly new. So again, I'll just go back to the beginning. I think this is Cory Booker is pretty excitable, it seems. And Linnea, you're so obsessed with him. You're probably going to move to New Jersey within the next year just so that you can get more Cory Booker. But I think it's an expression of just a general frustration among Democrats that they've been unable to get an organized resistance to Donald Trump this time around. And I think the reason for that is that there are some Democrats who realize that it's a loser as a tactic, but also that the American people broadly, and a lot of Democrats, especially on the immigration issue, actually agree with, or at least a significant number of them, agree with the policies that Trump ran on and is now trying to enforce. So they find themselves completely stuck because their donors and their most passionate members of their party are in the resistance. They are the people, like in the beginning clip that we had here, the nose rings, the dyed hair, the tattoos, the old boomers holding signs out there, all 30 of them, at a certain rally against Donald Trump. They can't find their footing because they're completely politically lost, because everything politically and culturally has shifted underneath their feet. They don't know where they are.
Yep. And I don't want to stay on this issue too much, because I actually had two other examples of Democrats trying to dig their heels in as much as they can that I want to skip ahead to. And Sam, I'm going to go to you on this next story. So our friend Mussolini believes that Democrats should start gerrymandering. Okay, so from Breitbart, we have Newsom has attacked Texas for its efforts to redraw congressional several. That's a strange problem in Breitbart. Anyway, to redraw several congressional districts, though it is doing so at the urging of the U.S. Department of Justice, which says that current districts are unconstitutional. Anticipating that the new Texas district map could add congressional seats for Republicans, Newsom has proposed retaliating by redrawing California's map to eliminate the few Republicans left representing the state. So, Sam, is it true that Democrats only play fair with redistricting? Is Texas out of line here?
It's really hilarious. I mean, saying that Democrats are going to start gerrymandering is like saying, well, the Heartland Institute is going to start supporting free markets.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the one thing that I find very interesting about this is they're doing a clever thing, which is they're using the rule of law and saying, Republicans, you have to stand by the rule of law, but we don't. And every time you bring up that we are not following the law, we're just going to ignore you, because when we have the power, we're going to use it. when you have the power, we're going to stand in the way and harass you in every way that we can. The problem that they have is they've hit the iceberg. They've already hit it. And Cory Booker is like the nose ring gals in the Sydney Sweeney piece. He's saying, let's turn into the iceberg. We have to turn into the iceberg. We have to, get more crashed into that iceberg so we go down faster. Maybe he's sort of a Democrat version of a doomer. He's like, let's destroy our party so we can start over or something. But it's ridiculous and really kind of sad to watch this self-immolation that Booker is leading and that the Democrats are engaging in. It's foolish, but hey, works for us, right?
Yeah, right. And Jim, you live in Illinois in the Chicagoland area. How's that districting work over there?
No, it works that I have a hard leftist representative in Congress, even though in my county and in my township, it's very conservative. So that's just the way it goes. I also used to live and work as a journalist in Southern California, and when I got out there in the mid 2000s, there was a proposition on the ballot in California about redistricting, that because it's been a problem for decades and decades and decades, and it was to allow a supposedly impartial panel draw the districts with the goal of making them as geographically contiguous as possible, so that you get representatives who live near you and represent all the issues and the physical space near you, so that you get better representation in Congress and in the State House in Sacramento. Of course, that failed, and the Democrats have been ruling California. The hard leftist Democrats have been ruling California for decades and decades now. But the idea that in retaliation to Texas, California is going to start to draw their congressional districts in a very heavily blue way. I saw it mentioned the other day on social media that in the congressional elections, 40% of the population of California voted for Republicans to represent them in Congress. I think 9% of the delegation from California to Washington, D.C. is Republican. And that's because of the way they draw their congressional districts. So whether you like it or not, this is the way politics is played state by state. If you're when the redistricting time comes around and your state legislature is Republican, you're going to get them to draw districts that favor that party. And the reverse is true if it is run by Democrats. We can talk about finding a way to make redistricting make more sense and have it more contiguous, but this has been going on for gerrymandering is the term comes from I believe, Sam, you probably know this better, but from a congressman from New York, I think, who this was in the early 19th century, if not earlier than that, is how districts were drawn. So this has been around basically as long as America has been around. So the idea that this is some sort of new thing or that the Democrats are retaliating is, as everything that comes out of the mouth of Gavin Newsom, absurd.
Do you know, you could make the case that gerrymandering is actually more in line with the constitutional principles in that it allows a state to have a sort of unified voice and say, okay, we're a Republican state. We're going to have all Republicans in the House. And you don't like it? Too bad. You deal with your state. So it's kind of interesting, but this all got goofed up by race and the 1960s and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. All those things, they're all bad things. We need to fix a whole lot of things. And like I said, I think maybe we at Heartland need to start making the case that no, gerrymandering's great. We did it with the endangerment finding. We set it up so that over years and years and years, we kept saying, hey, endangerment finding, bad thing, until the world was ready to get rid of the endangerment finding, and then they did.
Yeah, I would accept gerrymandering if we could repeal whatever amendment it was that allowed direct election of senators instead of having the state legislatures pick their own senators.
Agree.
That was a huge mistake in the progressive era in the early 20th century.
Yes.
Right. Well, I had one more issue I wanted to get to here. We're already at the hour, so I'm going to make this a lot quicker than I originally planned here. Yeah, this is another Illinois issue again, which I'm going to blame on Jim because he lives in Illinois, even though I grew up there too. So I'm going to pretend like that's not pertinent though. Anyway, so district judges are at it again, this time dismissing a suit trying to get rid of Illinois' sanctuary city laws. So from Breitbart, the Department of Justice accused the state and city of unlawfully interfering with the administration's efforts on illegal immigration as it continues to carry out deportations. The Hill reported that Illinois prevents local officials from providing immigration information not otherwise publicly available, while Chicago bars officials from responding to inquiries from ICE without a warrant. State officers are also barred from complying with immigration detainers. DOJ alleged that these laws and policies were at odds with the U.S. Constitution's supremacy clause under the 10th Amendment. So, you guys, every inch and flinch with this administration is fought and clawed over. It's kind of, as Sam alluded to earlier, it's kind of admirable because basic GOP Republicans don't fight this hard for almost anything. In fact, our representatives usually seem to prefer to be out of power so that they can kind of shrug and say, well, we can't. The Democrats are in charge at the moment. Donate to my campaign and we'll figure it out next time, which is just not good enough anymore. And Trump has really turned that whole system on its head, I think, regardless of what you think about Trump. That's definitely the case that he has shaken things up. So, I mean, really quickly, you guys, this last bit with all the district court judges, I thought we were kind of over this. I thought we were getting past this situation where they can just stop everything all the time. So what are we doing now?
Well, they're still doing it, but now it's only within their district. They can't do it nationwide. And of course, a lot of these things will get overruled by higher courts. Now, I don't know if this one will, because frankly, in my view, let the state and local governments, frankly, drag their people to, downstairs if that's what they want. If that's what you voted for and that's what your state is, and you're voluntarily living in that state, then they say, well, we want to be able to have, we are not going to do anything to stop illegal immigrants from being in our state. Let me say criminal immigrants, because they are breaking the law. They're not illegal people, but they're criminals. So we're not going to do anything to stop criminal immigrants from being in our city, but they can't stop the federal government from going in there and taking those criminal immigrants. So right. As far as I'm concerned, fine, whatever, do what you want, but you're going to go to hell your own way. And here's the other element of it. We can put it in the law, because I don't think you should necessarily do this kind of thing just on the executive level. But we'll put it in the law that your money that we're going to give you, because the federal government's always giving tons of money to the states and localities for a variety of things, anything we're giving you for, say, crime prevention, if you're not stopping, if you're not helping us stop illegal immigrants, you don't get the money. You don't get any of it. And that way they have some incentive to do it if they want it. If they don't want to do it, and it's such a big, important thing for them, they can do without the money. And I think that's really the way forward, is to let it be. Let the states do as they please, but make sure that there are not only consequences that the states, the citizens will suffer, but that the state's government will suffer.
Right.
I know a lot of people might not like the analogy, but this is exactly what is going on here. And it is the equivalent of Jim Crow laws in the South, where constitutional amendments are passed, voting rights laws are passed so that freed slaves can be full citizens and participate in America. And jurisdictions all over the South put up barriers and decided to resist that by any means necessary, by certain laws. And so we had to continue to fight back as a country to end that kind of regime. It is not very different now. You cannot, as a city of Chicago, you are not privy to pick and choose which federal laws you will agree will be enforced in your jurisdiction and which would not. By this logic, you should be able to set up a sanctuary city for owning and using firearms, and just nullify any state or federal law in your own jurisdiction, in your own little town, and let everybody open carry or conceal carry or do whatever they want, and not have to comply with any federal or state laws on gun control in the state of Illinois. It is exactly the same thing, and it is good, and it's going to take. We have to stop running into these lawless Biden judges. But the idea that because you want to, whatever reason, it doesn't matter what your reason is, that you're just going to declare that federal immigration law will not be enforced in my jurisdiction is in violation of the Constitution. When Cory Booker is out there screaming that Donald Trump is violating the Constitution, again, as usual, he has it completely backwards. It is Democrats in blue cities that are violating the Constitution. And that is the dangerous part, not the other way around. And I don't think any of these cities should get any federal money for anything. Education, roads, let alone their police forces, if they're going to continue to defy the law of the United States and the will of the American people and the Constitution.
Yep.
You could put that in a statute that would be over all of those grants. You could say that you can't get any money at all. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, and I think the Trump administration has threatened that, right? So, fun stuff. and so for our final topic here, guys, that I want to make sure that we get to, because we didn't get to talk about it quite as much as we wanted to last week, and new stuff has come out almost even as we went live here, as always happens within the tank. But for our final topic, we are going to touch on Russiagate again, because it is important. We got this report from Fox News a couple days ago, and I will caution that this reporter named no sources whatsoever. I swear this needs to be illegal or something. I don't know. It's completely obnoxious. It could be totally made up, because it's also a very bizarre story, but I'm going to report on it anyway. So from Fox Digital, with, again, no sources named whatsoever for the entire story. It's very aggravating to read. FBI Director Kash Patel found a trove of sensitive documents related to the origins of the Trump-Russia probe buried in multiple burn bags in a secret room inside the Bureau, sources told Fox News Digital. Multiple burn bags were found and filled with thousands of documents. One of those documents was the classified annex to former special counsel John Durham's final report, which includes the underlying intelligence that he reviewed. The declassification of the classified annex is being done in close coordination between CIA Director John Ratcliffe Patel, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and Acting National Security Agency Director William Hartman. Some of the context of that annex, including that the U.S. intelligence community had credible foreign sources indicating that the FBI would play a role in spreading the alleged Trump-Russia collusion narrative before the Bureau ever launched its controversial Crossfire Hurricane probe. So these documents have since been turned over to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, who is going to release all of that data to the public at some point. So, and also this morning, this just came out. Here, I'll post this into our background chat for a second here, Andy. Sorry, I didn't get this to you earlier. I totally forgot. But Tulsi Gabbard said that she got a whistleblower report from someone who said they were threatened to go along with Russiagate and its assessment, even though they knew that it wasn't true. And this is not surprising whatsoever, considering the way the rest of this has been handled. But Jim, you were unhappy last week when we weren't able to get to talk about this more, because you have no feelings whatsoever about this issue. No. But we knew about all of this stuff, though. I mean, nothing new stuff has come out, but nothing really new has come out except for these specific whistleblower reports and the like. We knew all of this years ago, but it really means something that it seems to be being very systematically revealed and worked through now. Gabbard seems to be doing a really solid job with it. So where do you actually see this going from here?
Well, I'm trying to be hopeful, but not foolish. I mean, I do remember Release the Kraken and all the other stuff that the Trump team had promised us in the 2020 election and all of that. And Kash Patel has promised to reform the FBI and, from where his perch is, and to reveal all of this wrongdoing that I think there's so much smoke there. There has to have been fire. And if you got burn bags, maybe there were some fires. One of the things that shocks me is that any of this evidence still exists. Supposedly the information that Tulsi Gabbard had revealed, some of it from the FBI, was in a secret vault that nobody could get to. It's like, why are they keeping this information? Why didn't they run through about 1,000 burn bags and make sure all of this evidence of wrongdoing was not already destroyed? That's one question I have, and I haven't heard it answered very well yet. But on top of this, you have Dan Bongino, the deputy at the FBI. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago, where he said he's seen things at the FBI that, quote, shook him to his core. All right. Would you like to elaborate on that, please? What does that mean? Yeah. What are you talking about? But when it comes to Russiagate, I mean, most listeners to this podcast have known this stuff for a long time because they read other outlets besides CNN, NPR, the New York Times, and that they've known the basic outline sketch of this entire scandal from the very beginning. And that's that Barack Obama, who, well, I guess the Supreme Court has declared that he would have immunity now, too, for official acts, just as Trump did. So he's not going to be in any legal jeopardy, although maybe his legacy will finally be accurate, which is very tarnished. But he was told by his top intelligence officials that there was no Russian interference, let alone coordination between Trump and his team and Russia and Vladimir Putin. So he turned around and he ordered a new assessment that would tell the opposite, that would create this fiction that the Hillary Clinton campaign was peddling, and use that before Donald Trump ever took the oath of office. They leaked this information to the press so that it would be nothing but Russia, Russia, Russia for the entirety of Trump 1.0. And then, of course, get him in legal jeopardy, get him impeached. All of this stuff, it's outrageous. It was a coup. The left and Democrats like to say that J6 was an outrage because it violated the so-called peaceful transfer of power between presidents that we have enjoyed for 250 years in this country. By no definition was the transfer of power in 2016 to 2017 a peaceful transfer of power. Every single lever that that President Obama himself and people in his administration could pull to sabotage and frame Donald Trump for treasonous acts that he did not come close to committing. That is something for which not a single person has been held to account. The fact that James Comey gets book deals that makes him wealthy, the fact that John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, can be a well-paid contributor to MSNBC, where he continually lies to the poor, stupid viewers of that network who will never know the truth if they keep watching it. All of these people not only haven't been punished, they've been lavishly rewarded for their treasonous acts against the United States. Because what I've said this on this podcast before, what's always amazed me about all of this as it's come out in drips and drabs over the years is that in all of these meetings, there wasn't a single person of honor to stand up and say, guys, this isn't right. I don't care what you think about Donald Trump. It's not right to do this. When they framed his incoming national security advisor, Michael Flynn, a decorated member of the military who had a spotless reputation. When James Comey decided, hey, let's send some agents over there and not tell anybody, so we can put him in a perjury trap, ruin his life, and take him out. There wasn't a single person in the FBI near him who heard him say that, let alone the 2 FBI agents he sent over there to do that illegal framing of Michael Flynn. Where was the person in the room saying, guys, this isn't appropriate and it might even be illegal? Nobody was saying anything like that. The fact that it is now, it might even take until the end of this term. Who knows? Maybe we won't get all the answers until the first term of J.D. Vance at this point. But at least finally, this stuff is getting out there in drips and drabs. And like I said, I remember Release the Kraken and all sorts of other promises that didn't come to fruition. I'm going to try to remain trusting as I can trust anybody in a government position, that Tulsi and Kash Patel and others high up in this administration mean it when they say they're going to expose all of the wrongdoing against Trump and his supporters in the first administration. I guess we just have to be more patient.
Yeah, it's always been extremely frustrating, especially since, some of this with the Russiagate stuff in particular, I've read a lot saying that probably they actually might not be able to immediately prosecute anyone because the statute of limitations might be expired on this type of thing, but they can do what the Obama administration's done, do what the Biden administration has done, and eliminate that, right? Just say, nope, we're extending it actually. So I would wonder what they can actually do. But I think part of the reason why a lot of this stuff takes so long and is so frustrating, especially to people who, I mean, let's face it, we're all kind of social media addicted. We like action and we like stuff to be presented the way that we want it to be presented. When
Oops.
Looks like we lost Linnea for a moment.
Looks like we lost Linnea. Go ahead, Sam.
Let me jump in here and follow up on something you mentioned, Jim, which I think is very important, which is that why did this never happen before? And I think the big reason, the big difference between 2017 to 2024 and today is that they have access now to the documents themselves. And it was hard to do anything without those actual documents. And why from 2017 through January 2021, they didn't have access to those documents is because those areas, the FBI, CIA, and so forth, were being controlled by people who were not, by no means, were absolutely not sympathetic to Trump and who disagreed with him immensely and considered him to be an illegitimate president. And of course, the illegitimacy was the fact that he got elected at all, not that he was elected in some dubious way. So the big difference right now is that those documents are there and they can go through them and slowly bring out the case, make it all very clear, because that's how you're going to have to do it, because there's a whole lot of skepticism that you have to sweep aside with at every step of the way. But the interesting question is, yes, why are those documents there? That occurred to me while I was reading that Fox News article, is why didn't they just burn those burn bags? And I think that there is a clear possible motive why they didn't, which was leverage. They needed to have those documents as leverage against people within their own administration, the Biden administration, and previously, of course, during the Trump administration. They would benefit from that leverage. So they didn't get rid of the documents. Now, why didn't they get rid of them starting in, say, early November, when you knew that Harris was going to lose the election and Trump was going to get elected? I think there's another important element of the Biden administration and the left that we have to bear in mind is incompetence. They're just absolutely incompetent. And so they could easily forget about the fact that they've got these burn bags and not get around to burning that evidence. So I think that it's not at all impossible for this to be real, that these burn bags exist and that they made it through to today. We'll find out. And that's the one good thing that we have is that it's a different world today from what it was up through about 2022. Which is that we now have alternative media that will get these stories out there. And there's certainly a lot of speculation, a lot of things that are eventually not proven true. But we get to the truth through the having enough information that we can all make our judgments on. So I think that this is an interesting improvement over the previous situation.
Yep. Sorry about that, you guys. The deep state tried to shut my computers down by deactivating all of my USB ports at once for some reason. So that was good. But yeah, no. And Sam, you actually transitioned here quite well into what I also wanted to bring up before we end the show a half hour later than we normally like to try to. But let's just be real. This is an hour and a half show. It just is. But anyway, Sean Fleetwood over at the Federalist pointed out that the Russiagate situation would not have been possible without the help of the mainstream press. He points out that the silence that they have right now going on in the media says everything about their complicity there. It's a great piece that he wrote at the Federalist. Andy's got it up on the screen there. Thank you. I highly recommend it. So he writes, how exactly have legacy media journalists responded to this enormous scandal? By attempting to discredit it, of course. When National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard disclosed the batch of bombshell documents last week, so-called news organizations like CNN, CBS News, NBC News, the Associated Press, and the New York Times rushed to sweep the explosive revelations under the rug. While a desire to protect their Democrat allies is certainly part of it, the bigger motivation behind the media's attempts to cover up the latest Russiagate revelations has to do with the fact that they acted as co-conspirators in the hoax from the very beginning. Put another way, they can't honestly report on Russiagate because to do so would require acknowledging their role in helping foment the charade. So the media was complicit and is complicit. How do they even pretend to be moderate or, just news organizations in general when they are such blatant shills for the Democrat establishment? It's one of those places where, again, Democrats are far fiercer than our own allies. They want to win. They want their party to win. They want to get power, stay in power, crush the opposition. I don't think that they can be stood against with, nice essays referencing Thomas Sowell. And that's why Trump has freaked them out, because he's a results guy, right? He's not a vibes guy. So the question is, can he make this stop? Is his disruption enough to give any kind of wake-up call or to just completely obliterate the mainstream media? Jim, going to you on this.
Oh, wow. Because I used to be in the mainstream media. I always have to feel these things first.
Yep.
What was your specific question again?
Can Trump make this stop? So the media was complicit because they have, in part, such intense TDS, and also because they will do anything to shill for the Democrat establishment. So is Trump's disruption of everything, him just plowing forward and getting his agenda through, is this going to break them to the point that maybe they reanalyze the way that they cover this stuff? Or are they just going to keep doubling down until they're completely gone?
That one. That's the one I'm going to go with. Yeah, I think that's obviously pretty clear. I mean, this is Molly Hemingway is a fantastic real journalist, and she does, in this piece in the Federalist, everybody should be reading the Federalist. Get them in your inbox and your email every day. There's always great stories to check out. I know some people over there, and they're fantastic. But this mentions in the story here that, weeks before Trump took office, CNN published an article by Jake Tapper, Evan Perez, Jim Cioto, and Carl Bernstein, the great Carl Bernstein, up on the, the Mount Rushmore of leftist propagandists. I'm sorry, journalists of the 20th century. They wrote a story that on a classified briefing presented to Trump that included, quote, allegations that Russian operatives claim to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump. That entire story was fake. It was fabricated. It was based on the Steele dossier. And the entire thing was everything that Comey and Brennan and Obama did was to get it in the press that Donald Trump was a stooge and an agent. And as Rachel Maddow put it, an agent of the Kremlin in the White House.
No offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Yeah, but people bought it. At least people who watch CNN and MSNBC and read the New York Times and listen to NPR. The frustrating thing here is that the media op worked, and the point here is correct, that they can't now report on the fact that Russiagate was in a complete fabrication and the details of how it was fabricated by Obama, by Comey, by Brennan, when they have those people employed in their own networks. Brennan was on MSNBC with Jen Psaki the other day. Jen Psaki, a spokesperson for Obama, who led the op against the American people and Donald Trump, with the man who also led the op, and John Brennan, sit next to each other on the set of MSNBC. There is no way she's able to actually ask him questions about how this all came about. Why did you allow the Steele dossier? Why did you agree with Obama that the accurate intelligence briefing be put on fire in a burn bag, perhaps, but canceled, and then a brand new one that adheres to what Obama wanted to hear, with a Steele dossier that you and everybody else knew was complete BS? Why did you allow that into the the new intelligence report for the president in the presidential's daily briefing. We know why. It was so that Donald Trump, who was entitled to those briefings as well as president-elect, would get that information in his brief, bad information. And then that information is immediately leaked by you, probably, Brennan and Comey, to the media to start the ball rolling that Donald Trump was an agent of the Kremlin in the White House. They can't ask him that question. They won Pulitzer Prizes for perpetuating this hoax. It's impossible for them. So, I think mainstream media basically is dying. It's without the Washington Post would probably have half its staff, if not be gone, if it wasn't bought by one of the richest men in the world, in Jeff Bezos. The mainstream media is dying. CNN, I can't understand how it can survive. It has no ratings. It's below, test patterns on. It's below a lot of YouTube channels.
It's below the WNBA.
Yeah, it's got worse ratings than WNBA, and that's saying something. So I don't think the media, if they wanted to survive, they would do a quick 180, apologize, and they could. I would even accept them saying that we were duped. I know that's a lie, but if they said that, I would actually accept that and give them a chance to get their reputation back and to actually report news. But they're not going to do any of that. So nobody's going to be able to get accurate information from any of these legacy media outlets anymore, because around 2016 and late 2016, every legacy media outlet in this country, all of them, decided to get out of the news business and get into the propaganda business and get into the Trump derangement business. And it was good for business for some of these networks for a little while. But now they can't get their reputation back, and their broad appeal to anybody who is intellectually honest is gone forever.
Yeah, well, sorry.
They're doing the same thing. Well, they're doing the same thing now that they did in regard to the Biden incompetence story. And what happened there? And see, this is good news. We're in a very good time here, because what happened with the Biden thing was that, well, they couldn't do anything. They couldn't stop it because it was so obviously true. And ultimately, then the right side gets to tell the entire story, and all they can do is say, nothing to see here. It's like, well, I see something here, and so the public gets it, and really now it's, hey, Biden was incompetent. They covered it up. The press covered it up, and that was a terrible thing. The same thing is going on here. So they're trying to say, well, nothing to see here. But people are seeing that there is something to see here. And the end of the story is going to be that it just further shows that the press are not journalists, they're advocates, and the public just isn't going to give them any credibility whatsoever. So this is a positive thing. As long as there's somewhere to go where you can get the truth, when the samizdat becomes a big source of information, then you have freedom. And that's where we're going. So, hey, this is great news.
Absolutely. Well, if you guys have any final points on this issue before we close it out, we are at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you guys so much for all of this, and everyone for hanging out in the chat with us here. I see, we mentioned in the background that we see a lot of names we haven't seen before. So welcome, you guys. We really do love our audience. On YouTube, please like the video before you close that tab. For audio listeners, rate us well in whatever service you're using and leave a review. Thank you so much to our usual panelists. Jim, do you have anything to pitch for us today?
No, just be sure to tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the Climate Realism Show on these very channels. It's going to be a terrific examination with a very special guest, Dr. Judy Curry, who is one of the authors of the only accurate government report on climate I've ever seen.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to be great. Sam, what do you have for us?
Follow me at ST Karnick and visit the Heartland website, heartland.org. It's just full of great stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We will see you again next week.